The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of CNS Channel 6.
We ain't giving up no mountain, we ain't giving up. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice bread, not one rice, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of the Rupunini and the Essequibo. Take time when I don't be criticized. This is our we love it, and we need to keep it. We have that right. So we ain't giving up no more. We ain't giving up. We ain't giving up no. We ain't giving up.
Welcome, viewers, to Faithing the Nation. I'm Shanika Haynes, and I will be your new host on Faithing the Nation as I take over from Miss MP Annette Ferguson, who you're very accustomed to. I'm sure we'll be seeing her on the program very soon as one of our guests on the Misuse. I just want to let you know that I am happy to be with you on this program where we'll be doing quite a few things on Facing the Nation as the weeks present themselves. We'll be looking at more work that is being done within the People's National Congress reform. We'll be talking to our MPs on the work that is being done. We will be giving you updates on our walkabouts. We will be giving you updates on our press conferences, the party standpoint. We will also be hearing from you, because as of today, this program will as well be a calling program. So coming down to the last half an hour of the show, we will be taking calls from you. We would like to hear your concerns and your views on issues that are affecting you, the people, so we can tailor what we do to assist you. So I want to thank you for, being comfortable as I go through the paces with you here on Facing the Nation. So the Facing the Nation, of course, as you know, it's every Friday from 12:30 to 1:30. I also would like to tell you about a few programs that we will be running on our live pages in terms of the People's National Congress Reform page, the APNU AFC page. There are quite a few shows that will be presented as of next week, starting Tuesdays from 7 to 8 with the Rush Business with none other than Mr. Randolph Critchlow. On Wednesdays at 6:30 to 7:30, we'll be having Advancing the Cause with Ms. Coretta McDonald, MP. Thursdays, as you already know, you will be having Ms. Annette Ferguson, MP. Her program will be running from 7 p.m. to 8, and it's now called It Is What It Is. And on Fridays, again, we have the Rush Business with Mr. Critchlow. And on Saturdays, Ms. Nima Flubes, our MP on the East Bank, will be having the show The People's Representative. And Saturdays, we have a new show added as well on our pages by Mr. Elson Lowe, which is called The Lowdown. And Sundays, again, we have Miss Annette Ferguson, MP, from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. and 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And on Sundays as well, from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m., we have the Rush Review with Mr. Critchlow. We would like to have you going on our pages, share our links. These programs are there to help you with what's happening in the country, how we'll mitigate the issues that we're having. So we're asking you to follow those programs with us. And some of you would have already realized the PNC has been holding press conferences every week. Those press conferences are held on Tuesdays from 11:30, where we engage with the media and we put out views on a different statements. So as we continue to watch the environment that we're in and what's happening in the country, internationally, we are happy to have you view those programs with us. Give us your ideas as we go through the paces. We also would like to talk a bit about your lookout for our walkabouts. The leader has begun a series of walkabouts throughout the country, and it's something that you can be engaged in. We want to interact with you so we understand what are your views, what are your feelings, what can we do for you, as your representatives. And the leader has gone to a few places already. We had I think it was last weekend, in fact 2 weekends ago, we were in Linden doing a bit of walkabout in Wismar and the different areas in Linden. He has also done walkabouts on the east coast of Demerara, where we saw him in Victoria, Beirut, Nabakalis, Golden Grove. There were many, many issues that were raised during those walkabouts that we have been able to address in our press conferences and matters that are pending that we have been dealing with. We also had walkabouts on the East Bank where he visited the Mucka area, Agricola. And it's not just the leaders are walking out. We're asking you to look out for your representatives in your communities as they present their case to you as we go forward, and also where you can speak to them about what you want. So we want you to be more engaged with us, so we can have that feel. Like I said, this program will be a calling program as well. And probably in another 20 minutes or so, I'll open the phone lines for questions and concerns to be raised. On your screen, you'll see those numbers. It's 225-008 and 225-0010. Today, before we open the phone, and we should be having our guests here with us shortly, one of the major issues that I want to discuss with our viewers here today is that of the continuous registration process. This process would have begun on March 7th, which is Monday gone. And as most viewers would know, and I would like to inform you, as much as we are calling for a clean voters list when it comes to these elections, because we have seen the issues raised in the 2020 election, and we have been talking about the lists that are bloated, and we would like to see GCOM make some serious corrections to the list to ensure that when we go to another poll, whether it be local government elections, whether it be general and regional elections, that the results coming out of those elections will be one that the population can be comfortable with, because from the baseline, the list is in order. So I want to stress the fact, because a lot of persons have been calling and looking out for the views on the party of this, because we have been calling for a clean voters list. While we call for a clean voters list, we have realized that GCOM has decided to move forward with a continuous registration process. And we feel it's important that our supporters and party members understand that this is an important thing that we must get involved in. Because if GCOM decides to do any other thing, we must ensure that you are on the list. So whatever happens, whatever comes, your name is there so that we can get to that election and you can be represented. Now, with the guest that I'm expecting, Mr. Vincent Alexander, who will be coming in with us shortly, we already know the commissioners have been talking in regards of having that clean voters list, and we are continue to press that issue, but we must note that the only way you can be on that list is if you are going to register. This registration caters for people changing their names, people who have moved, And most importantly, all those persons who would have registered during the house-to-house registration in 2019 who were at the age of 14, persons now joining onto the list. When I start speaking to my guest who has arrived here, and I'll make an introduction so we can have this discussion better, I would like to welcome on the program Facing the Nation, Mr. Vincent Alexander, a man with many titles, done a lot of work in different places. But I mean, today he's here sitting with us to give us some very important information regarding this continuous registration process and what is expected of you. Welcome, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you very much.
I was just explaining to the viewers of the importance of this continuous registration, given the fact as well that we know the GCOM would have decided to scrap the house-to-house registration that we had in 2019. I don't know if they're basing it on the court ruling, etc. But in that list there were persons at the age of 14 who would have registered to be on the voters list for the first time, who will now not be on that list. So it is extremely important for them to get on that list. I don't know. I would like, because we're having a lot of persons calling, talking to us, trying to figure out what has happened with the 2019 house-to-house list and what's the way forward, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you very much. That's a good point from which to start. What has happened to the information, data gathered in the exercise, the household exercise? Well, a number of things have happened with that. First of all, the persons who were of voting age and who were registered during that period, their information was used towards the updated of the National Register of Registrants. And as a consequence, their information may be extracted in the electoral list. So that is one set of people.
Category B.
Those persons who have registered or who would like to be registered in the house and whose information differs in any way from what they have done in the house.
Yeah.
Persons who are affected would be the persons who are under the age of 18.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, by a majority decision, GCOM took a decision to discard that information and to have those persons face the registration now in this process of continuous
Yes, registration.
Now, that in itself suggests that we have problems with the principles being used to make decisions.
Correct.
Because if you could utilize the data for the persons over 18, what is wrong with the same data
Being used.
and your capacity to process that data towards the entry into the Register of Registrants? Bear in mind that the judge's ruling did not say that there should be no house-to-house. The judge's ruling did not say that you should not use the information gathered in house-to-house. What the judge's ruling purportedly said was that you cannot use the house-to-house as the basis for a completely new register of registrants. Therefore, you couldn't take names off, so to speak, of the extant register.
Exactly,
registrants.
exactly.
That's what the judge said. The judge did not say that you shouldn't use this information, period. But there seem to be those who think that it should not be used.
And they're selective in the use.
They're selective.
as you would have just described.
Now, for example, and here's where one has to be concerned. When the current chief elections officer first brought the proposal, one of the erroneous, unacceptable things that he said was that the PPP had complained that the information had not been verified, and that was one of his bases for proposing that we not use the information. Now, that is ridiculous from this perspective.
It is.
The exercise was a legal exercise. The People's Progressive Party, like every other interested party, were given the opportunity
To have agents.
to have scrutineers reviewing the process.
Yes.
They did not accept that opportunity. And now here are they and others, unfortunately others who should be objective and impartial, claiming that because they didn't verify it, it is not verified. We cannot have legal processes
Yeah.
where people refuse to be involved.
And then
They
still have a
use
claim.
refusal to jettison the process. So that is one of the big problems we face with in terms of the decision. And it is contested by others that, well, there were problems with the data, and therefore it is better to go right back and start over. That the process we were going through was a process designed specifically to deal with the situation before the elections, and therefore we can't use that process with the same the data that we still have. All of this, none of that speaks to the fact that the House to House stood on good legal legs. The information in the House to House was processed in relation to one category, and therefore one can hardly find a good technical excuse for not processing it in relation to another category. So there are obvious problems, well, not problems so to speak, there are obvious issues about the manner in which GCOM, using the majority vote, has gone about this continuous registration process. Separate and apart from the fact that there are those of us who feel that we should not in fact embark on any registration process until we address the whole problem of how we can get a clean voters list.
Correct.
How we can ensure that when we have elections, we don't have a situation where the Register of Births and Deaths can report that there are persons whose deaths were registered who actually ended up being voted for.
Yeah.
Or where the chief immigration officer can report that there are persons who were out of the jurisdiction who were voted for. It clearly shows the need for GCOM to find an approach to get a clean voters list, notwithstanding the ruling of the judge that we cannot go to some ground zero. There has to be a way. The Constitution could have never intended for us to have a situation where people who are not entitled are casting votes.
Correct. I mean, one of the things that stands out here is you have mentioned they're using the information from 2019 House to House, but selectively. You're using for above 18, those corrections with the addresses, etc. But you're leaving out one of the large demographics of the population, telling them now that they must come back and re-register all over again. And if I remember correctly, during the process of that, the PPP actually went into the areas and told people, we're not taking part of it. Mind you, they still had their scrutineers on the ground. So for them now to claim, that it wasn't properly done, there were stakeholders to this. They were around, they were doing it. But now you're defending part of the list and, pushing away another part. But I think all of this is a part of what the PPP is trying to do to keep us with a list that is unacceptable. We went through for the first time in history, we were able to go into the ballot boxes and see what was done. And here it is, we found all of these issues. We were complaining prior to that the list had to be bloated. if your census that you didn't complete for how many years says you only have a population about 700 plus, but you have a voters list of over 600,000 persons, then obviously that list had problems. And, you know, we knew it was expired as well. That list was given a timing, and I think that date would have ended somewhere in 2014, why we were calling for the house registration to fix the list. But the PPP obviously deliberately did not do that. So one of the things we must stress here to you viewers, especially for those persons who are between the ages of 17 to 18, who participated in that the house, and even if you didn't, you need to go and get registered under this process if you are going to get on the voters list. Whether we have a local government election this year or whenever we're going to have a regional or general election. I mean, you already here touched on the issue of the clean voters list, because that was one of my next questions. How do we, what I want an idea from you, how do you think, because people saying, yes, we're calling for a clean voters list, etc. How do we actually propose that we garner a clean voters list in this case, with all that has happened and continuously occurring?
First of all, let me refer to something you said. You said they're calling on the people, the young people, to be registered.
Yes.
There's a problem with that as well, in this sense. GCOM has been in existence for some time now. GCOM has traditions, it has a culture, an operational culture. We have gotten to a continuous registration exercise without GCOM having the normal infomercials that would advise people on the exercise.
That is so true, that is so true.
So that we are not seeing today, nor yesterday, the proliferation of advertisements on the television and on the radio, pointing people to
The location.
the location and telling them about their entitlement, who is entitled, who should go, who should
What
not
documents?
go, what documents. So there is a paucity of the kind of public information that's required to make the exercise a success, to ensure that those who are entitled are informed, and based on being informed, are able to go to do the registration. So
Correct.
we have even that as a problem. Now you pose the question as this question of a clean voters list. A clean voters list is desirable. It's needed. But we need to understand that the objective behind a clean voters list is not merely to get a clean voters
It's
list.
a credible election.
That the objective is to ensure that your election is free and fair,
Yeah.
credible,
Credible.
and that the list you have cannot be manipulated, as is obvious, or as was obvious at the 2020 elections.
Correct.
So, in responding to your question, I want the people out there to understand that the real objective of all of this call for house to house and a clean voters list,
Yeah.
that those things are only means. They are not in themselves the end.
And correct.
The end is to ensure when we have elections, no one can manipulate the process. In this instance, using the voters list to have people who are not entitled to vote, to have people who are dead, to have people who are out of the jurisdiction, have votes cast for them. And so one has to look at this question from a wider perspective than merely, well, we want a clean voters list. How do we get a mechanism to ensure that whatever list we have is not manipulated and misused? In that regard, there are numerous approaches that can be used. There is the contention by some that the judge's judgment did not speak specifically to the voters list, that it spoke to the register of registrants,
Yeah.
and that there can be mechanisms used to ensure that the names which are extracted for the purpose of the voters list does not include people who are out of the jurisdiction, as would have been provided for in the regulations related to the National Registration Act. So that one could look for means by which you observe the ruling of the judge, that is, you don't take people off the register of registrants, but at the same time, you seek to ensure that people who are not eligible, so to speak, do not get onto the electoral roll. So that's one area where one has to do some examination, both in terms of the law and in terms of the technical processes, to see how that could be achieved. On the other hand, there are mechanisms, and mostly technical mechanisms, that can be used. For example, one could seek at the place of poll to introduce a biometric mechanism that ensures that, notwithstanding a bloated list, that only persons who can be identified at the point of voting by virtue of their fingerprints are allowed to go forward to vote.
Correct.
So what one could do is install the
biometric
the data with the fingerprints at the place of poll, and when one comes to vote, one has first of all to be identified not merely by an ID card, but by fingerprints. And we know that fingerprints are said to be one of the most finite ways of identifying individuals.
Can't be easily manipulated in any form.
So you won't be able to manipulate the system in that way. And in that way, even though the list might be bloated, the bloated element would not be allowed to go
vote.
forward.
Yeah.
And you will therefore have an election that is free and that is fair. So there are those mechanisms that can be reviewed. The extent to which nobody can argue the point of the bloated list.
Yeah.
We have a population of 700 and approximately 50,000 persons.
Yes.
We already have an electoral roll of 661,000 persons. 661,000 persons. We know we have a school population in the vicinity of 200,000.
Yes.
Which means we really should never have
Unless
a voters list exceeding 500 and something
yes,
thousand. Now
correct,
we're already at 661.
Correct.
And doing registration, which will probably take us up to the actual number of the citizens, when a large part of the citizenship is below the voting age.
Voting age. One of the things, I kind of going back here, talking about this continuous registration process. Yesterday, the People's National Congress, issued a statement in regards to some requirements that have somehow gotten on GCOM's list in regards to COVID, rather than, telling us the social distance, having sanitizing booths, ensuring that there is ventilation. They're now requiring persons going to register to have a vaccination card. Now, I was made to understand, due to some calls that were representation made, GCOM, you can bear me out here if it's true or not, GCOM would have agreed to allow those children who are 14 who are to be registered in this continuous registration process, because their timing stretches to, I think, the 31st of October.
That's a qualifying date.
To qualify to register in this process. And they will allow them to enter without a vaccination card. Now, but everyone beyond that are being required to either get a vaccination card where you are completely immunized from COVID-19, or you present a PCR test. Now, this in itself, I mean, My understanding is this. One, if we go back to the issue of the 2019 House, the House where now those persons who were extracted from the list are between 18 to 17 or 18, they now have to reapply. We did not have any stringent measures in regard of that age group getting vaccinated, but now you're requiring that. Now, it is my understanding as well, when you go anywhere with a vaccination card, you're asked to present a form of identification. So now you're basically stopping those individuals from getting one of the most valid form of identification in a country, which is your ID, by asking them to provide a vaccination card. It's like, it's so confusing in my head how we permit something like this to happen. And I mean, beyond that, when we talk about now going on to a vote, it's less people being eligible to vote, you are then saying to them, if for whatever reason, whether it was a health reason or whatever other reason, you are now denying them the opportunity to either correct the information on their ID card in persons who are older, etc., by asking them to present this. And let's not even talk about, asking them to get a PCR test. Most persons can't afford to go have a PCR test because the government is not just giving out free PCR tests anywhere. We see the inflation in the country, gas prices skyrocketing. People could barely feed their families. I mean, plantain being at 300 still after Christmas. We went Christmas, January, February, we're in March, and plantain is still high. So the basic livable, items you already can't afford, but now you're asking me to have a PCR test. And I know the party would have made a press statement and said they will be pushing to have this requirement removed, and they're asking their commissioners to engage GCOM on this matter. Have discussion started on this issue? Are we going anywhere with it? I mean, for the 18-year-olds as well?
Let me first of all say that GCOM did embark on this exercise demanding a vaccination card from everyone who turned up to be registered. That was their first demand. To the one must give tribute to the party for having recognized the problem and having brought the problem to the attention of GCOM, having agitated for a resolution of the problem. What GCOM has now done so far is for the persons in what is referred to as category B.
Yes.
Those persons who, at the time of the last registration, were between the age of 14 and 18.
Yeah.
They have now said that they would allow those persons to be registered without a vaccination card.
Okay.
The logic being this. If you're asking people for a vaccination card, you are presupposing that those persons have an ID card, which is a requirement for vaccination.
Correct.
And or are at school where vaccinations are administered to the school children without necessarily them having ID cards.
ID cards, yes.
So that what you're doing is you're saying to a large part of the society who have not been able to be vaccinated because they don't have ID cards, that they need to have both the ID card and the vaccination, because one follows from the other, before they could be registered. But obviously, they wouldn't need to be registered and have an ID card.
Yes.
So you're saying you don't have an ID card, you can't get a vaccination, but you need to come to be registered. But we can't register you because you don't have an ID card and because you don't have a vaccination card. So they've reversed that.
Wonderful.
But the reversal of that does not address the entire problem.
Correct.
Because there are people at large who may not have been previously registered, irrespective of age,
Yes.
who therefore have not been able to access the vaccination, who therefore will not have the vaccination card to go to be registered.
Correct.
And so, in a sense, one needs to look at the fundamental.
Yeah.
The fundamental is that voting is a virtual right enshrined by the Constitution.
Correct. Correct.
And there should be no mechanism in place that interferes with one being able to vote, and therefore if one is not able to be registered by some administrative arrangements, what in fact you're doing is infringing that person's
On the
right,
right.
to cast a
A
vote.
ballot.
And therefore
prohibited.
it is incumbent upon GCOM, recognizing that GCOM itself argues, based on what the judge says, that you can't take anybody off the list because they have a right, that we are denying people their right if we
In
insist.
an administrative way,
Way.
we're doing that.
And so it is for us to continue to push for the removal of the requirement of a vaccination card for the purpose of registration.
Yes.
And GCOM has to put in place the mechanisms for social distancing,
Correct.
sanitizing, mask wearing at the place of registration so that people could be able to be registered. We shall not allow the use of negative administrative mechanisms to deny people their right, when in fact you can put positive administrative mechanisms in place
To
to
ensure
ensure
that
that
all-
they get it right. And I mean, let's take Guyana. Huh? You're saying this, and there are lots of activities organized by the
State, yes, that is
where a
happening.
large number of people are gathered, and this criteria does not apply.
They're slowly removing all of the mechanism in regards to handling COVID-19. We would have seen for the our Republic celebration, there were juvees which was open to the public. They partied from one night into the next, and nobody, had certain issues. But now when we come to a place where generally, I've been registered, you go in there, it's usually you alone with the officers, you sign up, they take whatever pictures they do. There is already a mechanism for sort of socially distancing, but now you're adding something that will infringe on the rights of many persons who would have made a choice again for whatever reason, whether medical, etc., to not get vaccinated, and for whatever reason they can't provide a PCR test. And
you need to make the point, it's not just who have chosen not to be vaccinated. There are people who are in a conundrum in terms of vaccination. Because
Lost card.
because of their age, they're not in school, they never had ID card,
well, that too, yes.
and so you have a substantial number of people
So many reasons.
who are affected not by choice,
Yeah.
they're affected by circumstances.
That too, yeah. To be able to be vaccinated, even if they wanted to. Because you're asking them to present certain documents, even when you are going to be vaccinated. So, it's like it's going around in a circle here to systematically, in my view, stop certain persons or people from having what is enshrined in the Constitution as their right to, take part in that aspect. I see we're over half in our period here, and we will be opening the phone lines, maybe just having like 4 calls or so in regards, if they want to ask questions in regards to this GCOM issue. I would like to, it's a number up on the screen there, the number to call is 225-008 and 225-0010 if you have any questions in regarding to this matter. I see that the president in a press conference about last weekend, he was still parading on the issue of the 2020 elections and who needs to say he's legitimate, etc. I mean, another thing, and I know I'm sure GCOM is somehow involved in that case, where the Court of Appeal would have said they will hear the case despite the issues that in the High Court, which led it to the Court of Appeal, and to hear the petition, Order 99. Now we see the government, despite their saying the opposition parties would have rigged the election, they tried to stop democracy, and all these things. When we went through the recount period, we saw we had approximately 47 ballot boxes that did not have the requisite documents. And we hear him sitting, and I mean, he was really upset about it, the question that was asked, and that, you know, the opposition tried to rig. But the same president, the same government who are claiming the elections was rigged is currently spending taxpayers' dollar, the people who want to know what happened, at the CCJ to have that case shut down again. I mean, we kind of talked about this whole mitigation of what happened in 2020 in regard of these discoveries. And to hear the president try to justify who he needs to legitimize him in terms of the opposition agreeing that they were legally placed into government, and you spending taxpayer money to shut down the one thing that is standing right now that can legitimize your seat if you did not rig the election. I don't know, GCOM would have seen all of this, as we know in that you talked about earlier. In Order 99, there are those documents with death certificates that show that persons who would have died would have voted, persons who were outside of the jurisdiction as well would have voted, and this is based on the report from the immigration office that would present the evidence in that case. GCOM already having that as a part of their documents. I mean, we're talking, the reason why we need the clean voters list is to have a credible election, one that people can feel comfortable with. Is there anything else that GCOM is doing in regards to this? Please bear in mind, phone lines are open.
First of all, one has to be clear about who is GCOM.
Yes.
There are two elements to GCOM. There's the administrative element, and there's the commission per se.
Yeah.
Commission per se is made up of 7 persons. 3 who are nominees of the government, and 3 who are nominees of the opposition, and a chairperson who comes out of a process involving the leader of the opposition and the president. The fact of the matter is that in GCOM, post-elections, almost on every issue that has arisen, between the 6 nominees, there has been a split down the center, leaving it largely to the chairperson, in a sense, to be the sole decision maker. And in that regard, almost in every instance, the chairperson's position has not been dissimilar to that of the commissioners who were nominated by the government. So that you have a problem when you talk about GCOM, because basically what you have to a very large extent is the government pushing its line via its commissioners, and therefore seeking to achieve its objective using GCOM as a mechanism for doing so. And so the whole question or the configuration of GCOM becomes a live issue, one which has been addressed over the years by observers in terms of how GCOM is composed, the extent to which GCOM is allowed to be a neutral, professional body as opposed to a body under political influence. So that That question is looming large, particularly at this time, as we try to confront these issues, which are not being confronted technically, not being confronted objectively, but are being confronted from practical and political perspectives. So I think that's an important point that one needs to underline in terms of the GCOM that we're talking about. So that in some regards, some people are hamstrung in an attempt to get objective decisions, because if the decision is based merely on the vote, then the question of reason doesn't necessarily prevail.
Yeah.
It's a question of people's motives and
And
objectives.
yes,
that-
what are the objectives or
prevail.
whose side they're on?
But I think there was a second part to what you were asking me I might not have responded to.
What I wanted to know, if GCOM in any form, any style, based on what has happened in the 2020 election, having this information in their hand in regards to the recount procedure, is there any sort of discussion on how to mitigate the issues that we had, particularly with the 47 ballot boxes? Because bearing in mind, we saw even after the election, persons being brought before the court, but in those areas where those boxes came from specifically, we have not seen any movement in regard to the staff that were responsible for not having those documents, etc. there.
All right. Now, two things I want to say to go back to the question and its very initial aspect. The PPP has been saying, and now have people parroting, that there was an attempt to rig the elections over a 5-month period.
Okay.
Now, if anybody has a monicum of intelligence, they would see that that can only be trash. Why?
Yeah.
There was a problem in relation to the declaration in region District 4.
Four.
That declaration was brought to a halt.
I see a call coming in. It's also, well, I just missed it. It's a private call. I'm asking callers when you come in, I would prefer you not to call on a private number. And I'm asking you to be very respectful, no race baiting, anything of that nature on this program. Otherwise, I will simply cut the call off. You can go
Yes,
ahead.
that declaration was brought to a halt. And GCOM, in a sense, preempted by the leader of the opposition at the time, who was Jack Dio, and the leader of the APNU AFC list, Granger, agreed to a recount.
Yeah.
How can you then, during that period of recount, a process agreed to, a process that was observed, refer to that as a period when people were trying to rig the elections? So you see the kind of propaganda that is
Correct.
manufactured by these
Correct,
people.
correct,
And you
correct.
have people locally and otherwise parroting this thing, when in fact that 5 months period, for all intents and purposes, given the complaint, was a period of rectification, so to speak.
Yeah.
Though, in the view of some of us, the rectification did not occur.
That was a true act of democracy in my view.
Well, I don't know how true it was.
If you're saying people are complaining, oh, you tried to rig it prior to, and now you said, all right, fine. If you think I'm rigging it, let's just all open up the boxes, let everybody be satisfied, etc. But when you did that, we still ended up in. I'm thinking that I may take this call. Let's see what's happening here. All right. I guess I lost that call.
Yes, so in reality, the face of the people who get on TV and tell the nation about 5 months of, I mean, there was a 5 months delay, there's no doubt about that.
In the result.
But whether there was a 5-month attempt to rig, it's one of the most malicious, mischievous
Correct.
accounts of things
You had
that are now being
agents
parroted.
in every room, in every counting aspect. For you to get any documentation, you all had to sign it off. So how could that be an attempt to rig when everybody, all stakeholders involved were present, and you couldn't get any information, save and except we all agreed
Right.
in this room.
So it means that we were all either rigging or not rigging.
Yeah, that you're
We were all
correct.
either rigging or not rigging. So he has to point the thumb at himself in that regard if he's contending. And if they're contending, that was 5 months of an attempt to rig. The time they're talking about, for all intents and their purposes, was an attempt at rectification against the background of an accusation of an attempt that occurred in March.
And it uncovered what can be perceived and why we would like to have the petition heard. Rigging that happened, obviously not within that 5-month period, but during
On the day of ballot.
on the day of ballot, during the election process, we saw that happening with the 47 boxes. I have a call here. Let me see if I get this call. Good afternoon, caller.
Yes, good afternoon, Mrs. Hayes and Mr. Alexander.
This is
Good afternoon.
Pardon me?
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, my question is, it seems to be lots of illegality taking place. The PNC have, I guess, asked GCON to, I guess, have some type of sense in reference to the registration. But in fact, I believe what I think that the commissioners representing the DPNU should demand instead of asking. And the things that are asked for, and if I can recall, have the GCON chair, along with the commissioners on the other side, have they ever yield to any of the suggestions made by the commissioners on the other side? And it just seems like they're being steamrolled. And you got to come up with some type of solution in terms of taking this to the courts, because it seems like we're always behind the 8 ball. They're going to come out with what they want to do, and then we simply just come after the fact, as opposed to getting behind the issue instead of, always playing catching up. So there should be action in the courts to challenge what they're doing. And I think that needs to be done instead of trying to always playing catch up and always fall into the will of Mr. Strada Singh and the rest and the 3 other commissioners. Something needs to be done. What you guys are doing is informing the people, yes, but it's after the fact. And could you please respond to that?
All right. To respond.
Answer off here.
Okay. To respond to your question in regards of whether there has been any yielding on any situation in regard, we would have spoken earlier on the issue of the category B, according to how GCOM has it, which would be persons 14 years now, 14 as of March and to the 31st of October, and those who would be 18, who have never gone on to that list, after representation by our commissioners and the party, they have decided that they will not require, in that aspect, a vaccination card from that grouping. But we are now pushing further afield because there will be persons who probably would have never registered as yet as well, beyond the age of 18. And in terms of getting a vaccination card here, there is a requirement of identification. So you're still not catering for everybody. So GCOM did agree, after that was put to them by the party, to no longer require a vaccination card or a PCR test for that. I know you're saying we are informing the public, we're having press statements, but we are using our commissioners as well to instigate. But I guess at this point, if we don't yield any other progress in regard to beyond 18, having the requirement removed totally, maybe the executive of the parties involved may look to that end. Commissioner, any comments there?
What I can say is that the process has been observed by legal personnel as well,
Okay.
and that what they are doing is looking to see if there is scope for legal intervention. And I'm quite sure if they determine that there's scope for legal intervention, that will
will
occur.
be taken.
But as you correctly said, we are not merely speaking to the public. We have had reason to intervene at the level of the administration.
Yeah.
And we've specifically spoken today about the issue of the vaccines, where there's been some element of rectification. And that rectification requires that any that it applies across the board, but there's been rectification in other areas as well. For example, there was a problem with officers doing scrutinizing of registration where the APNU AFC had not been accredited for the purpose of verification.
Okay.
That too has been addressed, and the idea is that any verification which was done without the involvement of the APNU AFC has to be cancelled.
Correct.
And they have to go back to ground zero. So it's not just a matter of us giving public information. Some of the public information is also about processes which have been reversed because of agitation,
Correct.
which have occurred. But getting back to your question, we in GCOM have called for a review of the events of 2020 because we feel that review will throw up all of the flaws in the system that allowed, for example, for 47 boxes to be brought forward without the relevant documentation.
Okay.
We have so far gotten a consensus in GCOM that the review is desirable. Not everybody hasn't agreed. There are two commissioners in particular who have not agreed, but we've gotten a consensus.
Okay.
What we don't have a consensus on is when the review should be done. Our view is that the review should be done before any other election is held. Because what you want to do is to do rectification
Prior
that
to
will allow you to
happening.
run future elections without the same
Reoccurrence.
deficiencies. And therefore, it should be done before any other election. But that's a matter that is still on the front burner as far as I'm concerned. But certainly we've gotten to the point where generally there's an agreement that we should do a review. Now, you know, when these things are general, when you get down to the nitty-gritty, all sorts of obstacles may be put in place. So we are working on that aspect of things.
All right. We're almost at the end of program time, and I just want to let the viewers know you must check for your areas, the area that your registration is happening. Especially, I have been emphasizing, and I do know that there are persons who are maybe older than 18 who have never registered, who need to be registered. So you should be going to those centers. Persons in category B, that is persons who would have registered in the 2019 house to house that were at the age of 14, they're now about 18. And those persons who are currently 14 and will be 14 by the 31st of October, we are urging you to go out and get registered during this procedure as we try to mitigate the other things. Your documentation needed are things like your birth certificate, if you have a valid passport. In the case of naturalization, the relevant documents there, persons who are making name changes because of marriage, your marriage certificate. Those are some of the documents that you need once you're going to register. We urge you again to go out and get registered. And I would like to thank Mr. Alexander for being here with me to go through this, because we really think it's an important matter that has to be dealt with. We see the maneuverings of the PPP trying to manipulate in so many ways, and we must stay on top of the game to ensure we don't have a reoccurrence of what happened in the 2020 election at the level where it's local government or general and regional elections, which we are awaiting again to hear more about the local government. I just want to remind you as well, viewers, to go, most of you have Facebook, YouTube, go on those handles and look for the People's National Congress Reform page. You can also follow the APNU AFC page, and on YouTube there is the People's National Congress Reform page. You know, when we share stuff, you can share it on your pages, your groups, etc. But follow us and keep updated. And don't forget to join us here every Friday from 12:30 to 1:30. I just want to thank you for being here. We didn't have a lot of calls today. Really only had that one call coming in. Hopefully next week you will get, you want to bring something to the table, you'll call in and we will have a discussion on whatever matter you have raised. Thank you again for joining Facing the Nation. I'm Shanika Haynes, your host, and today our guest was Mr. Vincent Alexander. Do have a pleasant afternoon.
No mountain, we ain't giving up. We ain't giving up no tree. We ain't giving up no river that belongs to we. Not one blue sake, not one rice grain, not one rice, not a blade of grass. We love the open country of